So we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started since we're a little bit over 7 o'clock. I want to thank everyone again for taking the time to meet with us this morning. I know you guys are all very busy, and sometimes it's hard to coordinate across multiple time zones. So thank you for being here. Today, we're going to go over some key parts of the EQA program. We'll talk about program expectations, our surveys, investigation forms, answer any questions that you have, discuss any challenges you might be facing, and hear from you what's working well and what things might be able to be improved in our program. If you like and if you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and introduce your lab um, in our chat box, our Zoom box. Share, the name of your lab, what you do there, or anything else you feel comfortable sharing. Just realized that I was actually muted. Are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Vanessa.
Yes,
Thank you.
Vanessa.
Sorry
Thank
about that. I just wanted to say good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today. I know everyone is really busy, and sometimes it's hard to coordinate across time zones, so we appreciate you being here. Today, we're going to review some key parts of our EQA program, talk about program expectations, um, our surveys, our investigation forms, answer any questions that you might have. If there's any challenges you want to discuss, we can discuss those as well, um, and hear directly from you about what works well in the program and anything that you think that might be able to be improved. If you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and introduce yourself in our chat box. If you want to share the name of your lab and your title or anything else that you feel comfortable sharing with us. And then we can go ahead and get started because we're a little bit at about 15 minutes past the hour. Kate, do you want to start with the first slide? Thank you. So before we dive in, I'll just start with a brief overview of who we are and what we do at Pathologists Overseas. We are a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization, and we are primarily volunteer-based, and we've been working to build diagnostic capacity since 1991. Our mission is to improve healthcare by building accurate, accessible, and enduring diagnostic services. Our vision is to foster an international community of pathologists and lab professionals dedicated to strengthening health systems worldwide through reliable systems training and quality assurance. The EQA program, which all of you are part of, is central to that mission. In addition to the EQA program, we also run a couple other programs that support that. So one is our LIS program, where we donate laboratory information systems to labs that currently don't have one. And then we also have our Palm Ed. That's our virtual continuing education program. Many of you have participated in those courses. That would be our EQA 1.0 and our EQA 2.0, or maybe even our LQMS course, which is our Laboratory Quality Management Systems course. And before we move forward, I'll briefly introduce our team. Most of us have interacted with us, via email or your annual meeting. We've got Dr. Roa and Dr. Mary, they are EQA co-directors. They oversee the program and provide strategic direction and guidance. And Dr. Kate is our technical lead. She provides technical expertise and guidance as well. My name's Vanessa, and I'm the program operations manager, and I handle the day-to-day operations of the EQA program. With that, I'll hand things over to Mary to walk us through the EQA program in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Vanessa. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Vanessa said, my name is Mer Tesfazgi. I'm the co-director of the EQA program. So a little bit about the EQA program. You know this already, but to just give you a brief overview, our primary objective at Pathologists Overseas through this program is to offer access to the EQA program at no cost to our partners, to the labs, to you. And we achieved this through our long years now, a very reliable partnership with RCPA QAP, which is an internationally known EQA program that's based in Australia. Most of you know now that we primarily focus on chemical pathology EQA program, which basically includes 6 surveys in a year. And but we hope that in the future, when funding opportunities allows to expand to other programs as well. Next slide, please, Kate. So you're very well aware that with any program like the EQA program, there are some expectations that comes with it. And we believe that this expectation that we're going to discuss today are fundamental that comes with any EQA program. All of us that participate in EQA program are bound to these expectations. So the first expectation is that the chemical pathology program has 6 surveys in a year, and that we expect all the surveys to be submitted by all labs, so that labs can take full advantage of the participation in EQA program. But there might be some circumstance that would prevent some of the labs from submitting all these 6 surveys. So the minimum requirement for labs to automatically re-enroll every year in the program is to at least submit 3 surveys, 3 out of the 6 surveys, which basically means 50%, at least 50% of the surveys are expected to be submitted every year for the labs to be automatically re-enrolled in the program every year. If for some reason these labs are not able to at least submit 50% of the surveys, then they will not be automatically re-enrolled in the program, but they are more than welcome to reapply again in the next cycle year. But obviously, the priority will be given to the labs that are consistently completing the survey and submitting the survey and trying to take advantage, trying to take full advantage of the program. Yeah. And with the expectation also comes, we obviously strongly recommend the labs to investigate any unacceptable report that that comes with this participation, because inevitably there will be some unacceptable results, and by investigating them, labs could get an insight into the cause of the issue that basically caused it for the unacceptable results. And the other expectation is communication. So you may, like I said, you may experience any circumstance that may cause delay for you to submit the EQA program in a timely fashion. But please try to communicate that as soon as possible with us, so that we may not count the lack of submission as part of the 50% requirement, so that you may be exempted, and you will still continue to be enrolled in the program. So we understand that there will be some circumstances where you won't be able to submit some surveys. So please let us know as soon as possible in a timely manner, so we understand what's going on. And of course, we are here to support you whenever you have any issues that we can resolve or you think that we can resolve. Do not hesitate at all to reach out to us. We'll be happy to get back to you, try to help you resolve some of these issues, or communicate with RCPA, QAP on your behalf, so that we can resolve the issues. I think it's you, Vanessa, or me.
Sorry about
Um,
That's me.
yeah.
Sorry, I was just muted. I apologize. So, like Mary said, sometimes challenges do arise and you're unable to make your submission on time. Our CPA QAP does have a late submission policy. You would have to request that through them. You log into your portal, and you enter your results and submit for a late submission. This is something that should be used sparingly, and it should really be for times of special circumstances when a timely submission isn't possible. So the expectation remains that your survey should be submitted on time whenever possible. If your lab anticipates a delay, we strongly encourage you to let us know before the survey closes, to let us and our CPA QAP know that. But sometimes that's not possible. And we understand that as well. The final decision of whether the late submission will be accepted is not made by pathologists overseas. That is made solely by our CPA QAP. Um, and they do share their late policy on their website, and I can send that link out after the meeting tonight. And our CPA does recognize that there are different challenges, such as equipment downtime, or if you can't procure reagents, or if there's an issue with electricity, and those factors will be considered. If you're ever unsure of whether, your delay would warrant a late submission result, just reach out to our CPA or us, and we'll reach out to our CPA for you. So we'll take a moment to just kind of pause and hear from you. We're going to launch a poll. It's anonymous. We can't see who answered what, to help us better understand your challenges that the labs are facing. So it's just asking if you haven't been able to submit a survey on time in the past, if you could share some of the reasons why.
So this is a free text poll, so feel free to write down some of the reasons.
And we'll give everybody about a minute or two to complete that. And then we'll have about 30 more seconds. So if you're answering, you'll want to go ahead and finish up. And then, are you guys able to see the results on the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. I think I might have to sign into the admin account.
Or you
When I,
could,
We could,
Vanessa, do you
do
want
you
to
see
share
them?
them out loud? Because maybe we're sharing Kate's screen. Is that what it is?
well, I had hit share and I thought it would pop right up for me. But when I click on share, it's having me log in to another
Oh,
screen.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Let me just see here.
I mean, it's good to see the data, but otherwise we could also, I don't know if you can see it,
We can
Vanessa.
we can
Yeah.
go to the next slide.
Or if you can, we can share it later, or you can read it
Yeah.
out. Are
I
you?
can't I have to log in, it looks like. I thought it would pop up like last year where they had popped up right for me
Yeah,
in
that's
Zoom.
okay.
But we can I'm logging in now. We can move to the next slide and we can share it at the end during our Q&A if you'd like.
Yes.
So that's my part.
Yes,
Moving
ma'am.
on to sample storage. Next slide, please. So this is a poll.
Oh, yes. You can launch that as well.
And I'm just going to read it out loud. What is the appropriate storage temperature for EQA samples before they're reconstituted? And so this is a question that is basically we're trying to understand what the process is in your lab. When you receive the samples, the EQA samples, before you reconstitute them, where are they stored?
I'll give everybody about another minute to complete if anybody hasn't answered. And so looks like we have most people have responded. And 100% of our participants chose 2 to 8 degrees Celsius.
Which is the correct answer.
Mm.
So next question. So this question is, after you've reconstituted your EQA samples for whichever survey that is due, where do you store the reconstituted remnants of your sample after analysis?
And we'll give about another 45 seconds to a minute for this question. We're going to go ahead and close this poll. And it looks like 64% said -20 to -80 degrees Celsius. And we had 36 that responded 2 to 8 degrees Celsius.
Okay, thank you. So that's interesting. Next slide, please. So per our CPA QAP's instructions, all samples that are unopened should be stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, and they're stable up to 2 years when they're still unreconstituted. Even though, and we've had that question before, even though they ship at room temperature and they're stable for the shipping throughout the shipping process, whenever you receive them, they should be stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius until the time when they are ready to be analyzed. After you reconstitute them, it is recommended that they are analyzed quickly. The standard recommendation is within 30 minutes, but obviously follow the survey instructions for each analyte. For some analytes, if you do test them like CK and CKMB, the recommendation for analysis is that it should be within 8 hours. For ALP and troponin, you analyze within 1 hour or you freeze. And then the recommendation is that after you're done with your testing, you should freeze vials for later troubleshooting. So I'm curious about the labs that chose the option of 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. If they've retested these samples later when they've received their survey reports, what was their experience? Did they find that the results that were what they were expecting were different? So this is something to keep in mind. There will be degradation of this EQA material with time, but freezing it will allow you to retest it during the process of your troubleshooting. And this is something we can, again, discuss during the Q&A in more depth. So next slide.
Okay, so we get to talk about surveys. I apologize, I'm getting over a cold, so my voice is a bit technical today, but I think we'll get through. So Mary already set a really good stage on surveys, why they're important to submit. So we're going to begin by looking at the schedule. As you're all aware, there are 6 surveys. Each survey has 2 samples that need to be submitted. It is important that your lab is paying attention to the sample IDs that come in the box when you do go to submit surveys or when you do get to select samples to analyze for your survey submissions. As you can see on the screen right now, all the 6 surveys are listed. The samples that go into each survey, so survey 1 has sample 1 and 2 are also indicated. Importantly, there are also dates when the surveys open and when they close. Unfortunately, there's a tendency to wait towards the end of the survey submission date to submit, but I think that also puts labs in tight spots sometimes. So we encourage you to try to submit as soon as possible when these surveys open. That gives you a lot of flexibility in making sure that you are actually meeting our 100% submission rate, or at least the 50% for the year. So let's see. So we do have a poll here. And again, trying to understand what challenges your lab has encountered when submitting survey results. We'll appreciate hearing from you of all the different reasons, reagents shortages, staff turnover. We really would like to hear what your lab's experience has been this past year. So we're going to hold off for about a minute and a half to get your responses. This is free text as well, so please go ahead and type up your response for us. Thank you. So about 30 more seconds. Let's try to get at least half of the participants on the call to submit. So at least 12 participants. We currently have 11. So if you're wrapping up, please do so in the next few seconds. Excellent. So we have about over 60% who participated. So thank you for that. We're going to go over this during the Q&A session as well. Vanessa, is that correct?
Yes, just because we have to log into Zoom and grab those results.
Great, no worries. Okay. So if you're on this call, you've likely submitted results, but I do appreciate that there's significant staff turnover in multiple places. So it's always, a good reminder to just go over how we should submit surveys on the RCP EQAP portal. As you can see here, we do have a link to that website. When you enroll, all this information is sent out to you. You do have a login as well. Again, thinking back to staff turnovers, when you do have that happen and you need new login information, especially if the login is not linked to the lab as a whole and linked to an individual, please do not hesitate to reach out to us or to RCP QAP to get that login set up for the staff who would be submitting your surveys. Let that not be an excuse in assessment results. So please remember to reach out to get that login sorted as needed. But once you log into the portal, you will be presented with a menu of options, as you can see on the right. You have the dashboard, you have reports, you have result entry. At this particular moment, we're interested in this result entry bit. because that's where you get to enter your results. And once you get into that result entry section, you should have these options pop up for you. So it would list whatever surveys are upcoming, whatever ones are open, and whichever ones are closed. And ideally, you should be looking at where you should be clicking on the open tab, especially if the survey is still open. Once you click on that, you should be able to click on this survey instructions link, and that would give you the details on how to actually reconstitute the samples and submit your results. You would notice on this particular page that there also is information on when the survey opens and when the survey closed, and it does a good job of telling you what the status of the survey is for your lab, if it's not been submitted or submitted. So when you click on that survey instructions link, it would pull up for you the details of how to handle the sample, where to store it, how to reconstitute it. And it's important, again, that we're paying attention to these instructions. It may seem as though, instructions tend to stay the same from survey to survey, but just as a safe practice, go back or have your staff go back to look at these instructions as frequently as possible. So as you can see here, it does list how to safely handle the material that you get. It tells you about sample storage. We just went over that. And it tells you about how to process samples. I think paying close attention to this processing is important. We have seen situations where for samples that have higher concentrations of analytes, there usually is a tendency to not mix it immediately before analysis, so you can have either very low results in your EQA because samples have sat really for an extended period of time than not. So just pay attention to the details here that tell you to mix contents until dissolved and homogeneous, for example, which is step 6. And then you take the sample as soon as possible for analysis. Again, you have details of when the survey opens and when the survey closes. In that same portal, you would see the result entry tab. When you click on that, it would list for you the samples that are to be submitted for that particular survey. So in this case, you see sample 11 and 12, this would be for survey 6. And then it would list for you the measurements or the analytes that your lab has indicated that you would be submitting results for. When you do put in these values, it is important that you're paying attention to your units. The units could lead you to fail your EQA if the right ones are not submitted. I also do want to draw your attention to the fact that you can actually update the methods that you're submitting with whenever you go to submit. So when you have challenges with your particular instrument and you need to use a different instrument, it's always an option here to edit the exact method. Again, remember that this EQA compares your results to peers. So the wrong method could lead to a wrong classification of your EQA outcomes. So always pay attention to your methods that you're selecting. Once you do put in your results as a rule of practice, I encourage labs to have someone else check and make sure that those results are as they should be. So go back to the instrument, look at that data compared to what has been entered here. We do have situations of clerical error, which can be avoided if you have that additional step of having, a different person or yourself go back and look at those results as a second check. But once you do enter your results and submit them, you would see on this next tab, the submitted results tab, all the results entered, the units entered, and the methods selected as well. So a few weeks after you submitted your results, the reports come out. And when you log back into RCPA QAP and you go back to that menu of options that you have, right above the result entry tab, you would see a reports tab. When you click on that, you're able to see all the surveys that you've submitted and the reports associated with them. You would have to click on this blue survey button that should show up in your portal. And when you do, it would open up the the reports that have been generated for your lab for that particular survey. One of the first few pages, usually somewhere between pages 3 and 5, would have the overall performance assessment, where it lists all the analytes for which you submitted the results, as well as what the expected results are. You would notice that a Z-score is given, an APS score is given, and a review comment is also given. I know a lot of labs are familiar with Z-scores. RCPA QAP prioritizes APS scores. They tend to be a lot more stringent. They are also based on biological variation, and they tend to have a lot of strengths compared to the Z-score. And so you've noticed that with the review, they're reviewing it based on whether or not it passes APS or not, and not necessarily Z-scores. So you get the option of reviewing your results through either the APS or the Z-score lenses. The feature here that I want to highlight is all the way to the right of the slide. So you see this NPS value here. In this case, there's no value here, and I'll tell you why that is. So the NPS is the measurement performance score. So RCPA QAP, after 3 surveys have been submitted, calculates a numerical value associated with a particular analyte. And the goal of that value is to really point your lab to whether or not there needs to be an extensive review of how that particular analyte is performing in your hands with EQA. The value should ideally be less than 1. So when you have values that are greater than 1, it is important that you are sitting down and looking at all the processes that go into analyzing that particular analyte and seeing what can be changed. So I will really like to encourage you, starting from survey 3, once you've submitted at least 6 data points, so 2 samples per survey, 3 surveys. Once you have at least 6 data points, this NPS score is generated. So in your mid-year review, in your end-of-year review, these are things that you can review to look at the possibility of improving processes in your lab based on this NPS score. Another really cool feature that the portal has is this data analytics tab. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of labs using this, but I think this can help you really pull out excellent data that would help put your lab's performance in perspective compared to all the other labs. As you can see here, once you get into that data analytics section, there are different ways you can view the results for each analyte. So you select the analyte you're interested in. Here it is showcasing albumin. You can select the year you're interested in, and then you can get Uden plots. And the Uden plots here would plot the results from both samples. So sample 1, sample 2, in comparison to all the other labs. And it would show you where the APS, so this dotted square is where the APS is, and your result will be shown in as one of these dots. So you get to really see graphically where your results fall in comparison to all the other labs participating in that survey. You also would get a histogram, which is shown in the middle here. Again, your lab's data would be shown in comparison to how the other labs are performing. You could also see a linear regression. You could also see method comparison. And I encourage a lot of labs to pay attention to this method comparison section, especially when you start to consider having to get a new instrument to see how different instruments are performing for that particular analyte. Again, I do acknowledge that performance is not just based on instrument, it's based on your staff and other systemic issues. But this serves as a good point to really look at how different labs and different instrumentations are performing overall in comparison to your lab. So as Mary also mentioned, investigation forms are key. Really the goal for participating in EQA is not just to check the box. The goal should be to say if there's an unacceptable, how can we make sure the same error does not happen again? If it was a clerical error, how do we make sure that our staff are well trained? But without investigating, it's hard to even tell that it was a clerical error. So Pathologists Overseas expects that labs are submitting investigation forms for each survey that they participate in. Now, some labs have their own instrumentations or their own instruments or forms that they use, but we've also designed a form that is meant to help you see things sort of in a linear format. So we have all the surveys on one document, and we'll go over this shortly. So that after every survey, once you fill it, you can always easily go back and see whether you've had the same errors happen and really assess how good your corrective active action investigations and practices have really been. So each lab has a folder with pathologists overseas. It's hosted on Google Drive, and every year we do upload clean copies of these investigation forms in the folder. So you should be able to go and access that. If you need help accessing it, please reach out to us. We have the email address here, and we'll be able to assist. We actually have quite a number of labs on WhatsApp as well with pathologists overseas. Always feel free to utilize that as a platform for ease of communication as needed. So we're going to go ahead and do a brief but live demonstration of unacceptable results investigations. So when you click on your lab's link, you would see something similar to this show up. Sometimes the formatting may be a bit off and it'll be hard to see things. So just as a quick reminder, you can always zoom out to be able to see things, as a whole, basically. So if you put this at a 75% zoom, you would be able to see some notes we have here on the left panel about the general instructions on how investigation forms should go about. We do have some suggested corrective actions for identified errors, where, for example, if you had clerical errors identified, the goal would be to train your staff, you review an SOP, you generate or review your SOP regarding, EQA entry, so on and so forth. So it's quite useful to go through this list when you go down. But as an overview to this form, you would see that we have survey 1 currently being displayed. When you scroll, so if you go to the bottom and scroll all the way to the right, you would notice that we also have survey 2, 3, all the way through survey 6 on this one document. And when you start 2026 and you go into fill this survey, the goal would be to put in these quote unquote demographics up here. So who did the investigation, what date was the investigation completed, so on and so forth. And then you would come down and then go analyte by analyte and then see where your unacceptables were. So if you take albumin, for instance, if you use, say, a Beckman Coulter, you would go ahead and enter that information here for your analysis. The number of unacceptable results. So remember, there are 2 samples being submitted for each survey. It is possible that you may have unacceptable results for both samples. So in that case, you would select 2 to signify the 2 unacceptable results. If you only had an unacceptable in one and not the other, then it would be 1. And if you did not, it would be a 0. We do have some additional options here about, the test not being offered by your lab or results not being submitted, possibly due to challenges. And we appreciate additional details as you can afford when you go down. You can put in those additional details for us. There is also the source of error, and this is ideally after you've investigated. So we see here there's a good number of options that you can select. So if there are clerical errors, procedural errors, analytical errors, you can select which one best matches the error that you identified. And if it is not listed here, that is absolutely not a problem. You just scroll all the way down, and you would notice at the bottom that there is an option to input lab's findings from investigations. Please go ahead and enter that detail here. It is free text. You can text as much as you want, type as much as you want here, and we appreciate seeing those details. So once you select your source of error, you do have the option here of selecting whether or not the issue has been resolved. So if, say, you had to do a calibration and then you recalibrated, you rerun your EQA material and everything was resolved, that answer would be yes here. If this is an ongoing issue that you're noticing then that would be a no. The main differences between, say, survey 1 and the subsequent surveys is that there's an additional question, which says here, on which recent surveys has this occurred? So if for survey 2, albumin was unacceptable, you had a clerical error, this same issue or the same error happened in survey 1, then you'd go ahead and select survey 1. If this is a new error that was not previously identified, then that would be not applicable. Again, the goal here is at the end of the year, when you go back and you scroll through, you should be easily able to pick out patterns in terms of how you've investigated, in terms of how the errors keep showing up or not. We made this color coded to make it a bit easier when you're rapidly scrolling through to see how things are changing for your lab. Okay, so that basically is unacceptable investigation forms. If your lab has its own form it uses and would not want to use this, that's totally okay. Please communicate that to us. Please be sure to send us the results 2 weeks after the reports have been released. And we welcome, seeing how different labs do things. I mean, this may not necessarily be the best or most convenient for your lab, and we acknowledge that. So thank you for your commitment to quality. And again, please reach out if there are any questions regarding investigation forms or surveys.
So for our next poll, we just want to gauge how comfortable you are with using the unacceptable results investigation form so we can get some feedback and make any improvements. So we'll give everybody about a minute or so to answer. And we'll give you a couple more seconds. So if you're answering, you'll want to go ahead and finish up. So it looks like out of the 50% of people that responded, they said they were comfortable. About 21% said they are very comfortable, and 29% said they are not at all comfortable. If you have any questions or you don't feel comfortable with the document, please feel free to reach out. We can answer any questions that you might have, or we can answer them at the end of this meeting. And like Kate said, you're always welcome to use your own internal tracking form if you have one. And then our next question, we just wanted to know what kind of challenges your lab faces that might make it so that you can't turn your form in on time. I'll go ahead and launch that poll so we can collect that data as well. And we'll give everybody about 2 minutes to answer this one. If you selected other, there'll be a free text box for you to explain, and we'll be able to review those results at the end as well. And we'll give you about 20 more, 30 more seconds. So it looks like that most people shared that they did not have any challenges. There were some challenges though with that short turnaround time, as well as staff shortages or vacations or having a large workload. And then we'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Roa so she can give you a little information about our upcoming program evaluation.
Thank you, Vanessa. So the POEQ team would like to hear from you, and we are planning to send you an anonymized survey to understand how you rate your experience with the program and also your own performance on the EQA challenges. So in the meetings that we've had with the labs, over this year and during the annual during the end of year meeting, we ask you a lot of questions. We want to hear about what are the challenges that you are facing, what are some of the obstacles in getting the results on time, submitting the investigation forms. But we also want to know what your feedback is on us, on the program, and at the same time, an overall assessment of your own performance. So very important to note that this form will not collect names. It will not track email addresses. So please be as transparent as possible. And another important thing is to designate one person in your lab to fill out that survey. So we will send the survey to that person so that we can get the experience of the lab, not just the experience of individual personnel. And then we are aiming to have the survey ready by February. We really would appreciate your feedback. Again, it's very helpful for us to continue to improve this program.
Thank you so much, Roa. We'll go ahead and hand it over to Mary so he can give us a little bit more information about the end of year summaries this year.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. So we do also provide the end of year summaries, which I think we've started doing so since last year, and there is one coming out very soon. And we do this summary based on 4 key performance index that we follow on a regular basis. And these are compliance, reporting, accuracy, and commitment to continuous quality improvement. The compliance, like we've mentioned, is that, the surveys must be or are expected to be submitted 100% of the time. You have 6 surveys per year. Ideally, you want them submitted all. The 50% I want to emphasize is only for labs that are, facing challenges. Otherwise, the expectation is to submit those surveys 100% of the time. Reporting is the percent of results reported. So ideally 100% if there is no issue with, stock outs or reagent related or instrument related issues. If there is, like we've mentioned, if there was some challenges that prevented you from reporting results, then please let us know or indicate it in the investigation form so that we're aware of what happened. There is also another metric that we follow, which is the accuracy, which is basically the percent of acceptable reported results. The target is that optimal or, ideally you would want to be 100%, but we consider anything 80 or, above 80% to be an acceptable performance. And one of the indicators that we use for commitment to quality improvement or continuous quality improvement is the investigation, investigating unacceptable results. And like it has been indicated that we college overseas expect, submitting those investigation forms in a timely manner. And one of the reason, of course, is the primary reason is that so you understand, the cause of the error or the cause of the unacceptable results. But also we do use that. We monitor that so that we kind of use it as an indirect or direct indicator of commitment to quality improvement. And the target is 100%. Next slide, yeah. You see, Vanessa.
I'm sorry, Mary. I'm sorry, Mary, what did you say?
Is-
Looks like Kate is actually in charge of the slides,
Okay.
but I might be able to get into that for you.
Okay.
In the intro.
So I can take this. So as part of the Pathologists Overseas EQA programming, our goal is to meet with each of our labs at least once yearly. So this past year, we've been fortunate to meet with several of you in our mid-year meeting. So thank you to all the labs that, dedicated time to showing up and discussing your successes, your challenges, and wins with us. The goal is to continue to meet with all the labs at least once every year. So be on the lookout for communication from us regarding these meetings. We will try to target them towards the middle of the year, middle of the survey year. So around survey 3, survey 4. That way, challenges that you've had as the year has progressed, opportunities for improvement will be able to be shared and discussed. So the goal of this meeting really is an opportunity for you to share your experience with us. From our end, we encourage you that you come up with questions that surround your survey performance metrics, investigation outcomes for unacceptable results, and some lab-specific challenges and opportunities for improvement. Again, we reach out to you to set up these meetings where we expect that the labs are the ones leading these meetings and using us as resources to help discuss some of the challenges the lab has ongoing. So I'm going to hand this back to Vanessa to lead the section.
Of course. So I do have the results in from those free polls, so I can go ahead and share. I've compiled them into a document. I'll share them on my screen and we can discuss those. And then Kate, do you mind if I share?
Go for it, Vanessa. Trying to.
Great. Thank you. Let me just go ahead and pull up that document. Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So it looks like we have the first survey was if you could not submit your survey results on time. We had some answers that there was a delay in getting the results back from the lab, reagent stockouts, major equipment breakdowns, and it looks like we also had some other labs that were encountering reagent stockouts as well. Did anybody have any questions or specific scenarios that they wanted to share with us? I know this is something that I know the reagent stockouts is something that you've heard too, Kate, in some of the meetings you've had with labs.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a quite prevalent issue actually on the labs that participate in our program, and that is completely okay. We do acknowledge that sometimes the labs do not have really close oversight in terms of what is purchased and when reagents come. And so we continue to encourage labs to reach out to us to let us know ahead of time if for a particular survey reagent stockouts would be the reason why you're unable to submit. We take that into consideration as we review. Thanks.
Of course. And of course, if you know that, like Kate said, if you know you're going to have a stock out issue, please let us know. But also, you can utilize that late policy with RCPA QAP to see if you would be able to submit once you do have your reagents in stock.
And
Same
I
thing.
would like to add to this that it's also our understanding that the labs have backup methods for some of the analytes that have frequent reagent stockouts. And I know the labs have been careful about this when they're submitting the results, but we'd want to encourage you to continue to do so to make sure that the method that you're choosing when you're submitting the results matches the method that that was used to test these analytes in the case of switching to a different method, again, because of reagent stockouts, because that's critical for the integrity of the data, but also how your results are going to be assessed.
Thank you, Roa. Looks like there was also some issues with equipment breakdowns. Again, you can always reach out to our CPA. And then it says delay in getting the results back from the lab. Would that be your own lab or would that be from, that wouldn't be from our CPA, right? Like any information
I
from
would
them?
imagine this means that potentially someone from the QA team is reporting that because they're the people, they're the person that basically enters the result. And I would recommend that that this is best addressed as a review of internal processes to see where this disruption in getting the results back from the lab on time is coming from. Is it again because of reagent stock out, equipment breakdown, and this is not being communicated, or is it actually that this is available and there should be no issue in providing these results, and it's just a communication issue. So a review of the internal work processes would be helpful in this case.
Thanks for elaborating, Roa. We can move on to question 2. So it looks like we had asked about challenges submitting those survey results, getting them in on time. Looks like we've got, issues with equipment, whether it was down or waiting on new equipment. Again, some reagent issues, some power issues. I see that there's a response that only one person in the lab had access to submit results and they were unavailable. We are able to have our CPA create multiple accounts for you. I can always send out the information for that after the meeting as well. So this way you don't have to depend on one person. Or the deadline time misinterpretation. That has been a challenge that we've heard from labs before. It can be confusing because when you see the deadline time, that is in Australian time. And some water quality issues and reagent integrity as well.
So I think we should open the floor now to any Q&A to discuss these questions or any other concerns, feedback that you have for the team.
And you can do that by typing in the chat box, or if you feel comfortable just speaking up, that works too. And while we're waiting for
Yeah,
people,
I think you have one raised hand. I can't see it here.
oh, let's see. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Looks like there is one in the chat as well. Is there a
Can I speak?
possibility? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Dr. Ibrahim.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, good day to everyone on the call. One challenge that we've had in our lab is that apparently we are the only one that use our instruments. So it's been difficult to compare us to our peers. We've also noticed that we've had challenges continuously with some of our analytes, particularly ALP, direct, and total bilirubin. Initially, my plan was to change our method to our backup method. But unfortunately, the backup method we have is a manual method. So I'm also scared that we may be the only one that may be using that method. So I'm caught in a catch-22 situation. How do I resolve that?
Yeah, I mean as you know, the EQA program works based on the peer evaluation, and it can be a challenge if you don't have sufficient peer. Before I answer, let me ask you one follow-up question. Is every analyte, do you see this with every analyte? Like, you don't have sufficient peer with every analyte that you submit?
Yes, every analyte, or almost all analytes, that we at least general chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had some analytes that consistently our results are poor, and we've complained to the equipment guys, and they've done this, done that, but at the same time, we still keep having the same issue. So apparently, we can almost conclude that maybe on their equipment, those analytes have issues.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I think that can be a challenge. So do you see in the report that we've shared today and in the report that you received, do you see some other methods that seem to be very close to your method? May not be exactly the same method, but very close to the method that you have. And perhaps some, to look into some publications where how well your method compares with some of these methods that are reported in the report that you receive. And so you could use those, as well. Sorry, to compare your method with. Do you see that?
No. No.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it can still be. So, do you receive any complaints from the clinicians that you're, with the results you provide, some of the results are not reliable? Is it, the result that you see, is it consistent with the complaints that you receive from clinicians or physicians?
Well, in truth, we don't receive, I wouldn't say we receive complaints like that for some of the analytes that I've mentioned.
Okay.
So that's why it's difficult for me to say, okay, are we really doing poorly? Is it the instrument? Is it, But we don't really, yeah, we get complaints, but I wouldn't particularly say it's for those analytes. Once in a while, maybe some random errors will happen or some systematic errors at some periods, we get complaints, but I would not really pin them down to those analytes that we have not done well on the that have not done well on the EQA program.
Mhm. So, yeah, I mean, there, you'll have to see multiple matrices to kind of figure out that the results you see is not consistent with, the actual performance of the test. So it could be related to the fact that you're being compared to another instrument. But in general, if your instrument is doing great, you should be able to compare with other instruments as well, right? But also you're aware that some of these some of these RCPA samples are also repeated. At least two samples are, the same over a period of 1 year. So when you look into these samples, do you get the same results? Were you aware of that?
Well, when we had the meeting with you the last time, we realized that for some of them, we noticed some imprecision in our method, in the method. But for some of them, the results were still similar, even though they were far from the APS. But when you compare the two um, surveys for the year, the results were close, but some were far away.
Yeah.
Then we also had a challenge last year, this year, we also had a challenge of major equipment breakdown. And we couldn't submit survey for two surveys. So that also limited this troubleshooting.
Yeah, so a couple of you could still use the program. I mean, the whether or not you're being compared, the fact that you're being compared with other methods is the reason why you may have a couple of unacceptable results is something that need to be carefully investigated to kind of uh, rule out that it's not your method that is actually the issue. It's the fact that you're being compared to the other methods, which could be a commutability issue. But before you go there, I think it would require to carefully look into your system and your method, making sure that it's not an internal issue, including the equipment that is causing the unacceptable results. But also within your over a period of time, like I said, over different surveys, you have the opportunity to kind of look into your own performance using the same method, the two samples that I just mentioned. But also they provide the linear regression, which basically helps you to kind of see how you do over a period of time, right? And you have the Z-score that you could also utilize in the investigation form, and imprecision over a period of time, how stable your system is over a period of time. There are a couple of things that you can use to kind of make that conclusion whether this is inherent to the method that you're using or this is the fact that you're being compared to not with peer but with all methods.
Thank you very much.
We have several questions also in the chat. I can go over the first one. We have question from Mr. Freud. Is there a possibility that the result comes with measurement uncertainty for incorporation on our lab calculations? And I can answer that. So including measurement uncertainty or determining measurement uncertainty for your analytes is obviously an ISO requirement, especially for labs that are interested in obtaining that accreditation. However, it is a metric that is typically not provided by EQA programs because it requires a component that it's a service that EQA providers don't offer, but also there is a component of that measurement that is internal to the lab, which is your precision. And in the interest of time, we can actually have this discussion separately and share some of those commonly used methods to calculate measurement uncertainty in a separate document that we can share with the labs. But as you know, in order to get measurement uncertainty, most commonly we're thinking of basically looking at a bias component, which can be obtained from your EQA data, but you're also looking at your precision component, which typically you obtain from your IQC results. So dependent on whether your bias is significant or not as significant, you might want to just use your expanded measurement uncertainty as a factor multiplied by your standard deviation or your CV. However, sometimes and in this case, if you're not incorporating EQA, if you're not incorporating bias, then the EQA data is less actually helpful. But you can certainly go back to your EQA data, preferably over a year span. And if you've been in this program for a while, you have a lot of data points to calculate your bias from your results versus the expected target, but also combine that with your CV or your SD from your internal QC data in order to derive your measurement uncertainty. Like I said, we can spend a lot of time discussing measurement uncertainty. I just wanted to clarify that this is something that labs are expected to derive for themselves, and EQA providers do not provide the service, but also do not have the required data in order to provide that service.
So I'm going to add a little bit to that.
Yes.
With the reports, once you've submitted the first 3 surveys, RCP actually provides a bias and a CV value for your lab. But again, as Rora said, your internal QC would be the best source. But if you did want the bias and imprecision results from your EQA, you have to wait and submit at least 3 surveys to get that generated by in your report.
Thank you, Kate. They also do provide a measure of imprecision, but I would argue that your imprecision from IQC is a better assessment for that to use here, because it's going to come from more measurement time points. We lost Mr. Freud. I hope he was able to hear this answer. And then
You just came back in, Roa, so we can check.
Okay.
See what the last thing you heard was.
In the interest of time, we can share this information with everyone, like I said, in a response document. I know that Dr. Ife had a question, but Mr. Wanome had a question in the chat earlier. Happy to take that, or Mary or Kate, if you want to answer as well.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Ife. So my comment is about the Excel spreadsheet for the unacceptable results investigation form. So I had made this comment before during one of our internal sessions about when investigating, the Excel just gives you the drop down of the sources of error. And sometimes the error you've identified may not be one of those options. So at our last meeting with Kate, well, she was able to tell us we could create an extra column, and she actually did that now shows source of error, additional details. So I don't know if this was cut across other labs, but it's been very helpful for our lab. So there's something that we discovered that is not one of the options, at least we now have a place to put in that extra comment. So I just wanted to at least thank you for this solution. And in case other labs are having this challenge, they can also have it implemented for them.
Thanks, Dr. Ife. That's a great reminder of one of our sessions from earlier. I think that's an easy fix for all the other labs. I think next year for the forms we generate, we can automatically have that included for all the labs to take that pain point away. Thanks for bringing it up.
And then the question in the chat from Mr. Henry Waname, what could be the reason for one of the samples tested to be outside the APS and the other passes when all the analytical processes and sample handling has been performed in the same way? For example, sample 9 and sample 10, one passes, but the other fails. And so I can, Mary, I'll ask you that question, but one observation is that that's actually typically how if you get unacceptable results, that's what it's going to look like. In our labs, for instance, when EQA samples in the US are actually termed proficiency testing. And so when you get back your PT results, you have multiple challenges per test, and typically one challenge has failed or is unacceptable, and the others had passed. So that is actually the most commonly encountered error, as opposed to seeing all challenges or levels have failed. Mary, any comment, or Kate, any comment on this?
Yeah, I mean it's the nature of how it is designed. It could be related to concentration. Yeah, because in every sample you'd have two in every survey you have two samples, and these two samples also are two different concentrations. So you could have failures based on concentration dependent, meaning that your assay might be on a particular analyte might be good at a certain concentration, but not at the other concentration. So the issue you face may be concentration related. If you see this over a period of time, only focus it on a certain concentration, let's say, sample 2, but you don't see issue on sample 1, this is a good hint that the issue that you have could be imprecision or a bias or inaccuracy is concentration dependent. It's either at the higher concentration or at the lower concentration. If you always see the same issue, sample 1, sample 2, you always fail, it's not concentration dependent. You can come to a conclusion that it's not concentration dependent, and therefore you'll have to see it from the entire system perspective. So that's probably one reason that you could have that issue.
And I think the concentration dependent ones, again, as Mary said, usually would have to do with the highly concentrated sample. And that often comes from, just slight differences with handling. Once you mix the sample, instead of, testing it immediately, you could sit down for a few more minutes and you can have a settling. And that could negatively influence your results. So just, I guess, following the instructions for handling closely for both samples, I think may help if it's concentration dependent and not in precision or something random. Okay, do we have any other questions? Feel free to speak up. Comments, questions, all are welcome.
Looks like we don't have any more questions in the chat. Vanessa, should we hand over to you to conclude the meeting?
Of course.
Yeah.
I just want to say again, we truly appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. As a reminder, we'll be sending out an email with a link to the recording of today's meeting. You can feel free to share that with anybody in your lab who couldn't attend. The email will also include links to any resources or information we discussed today, like the late submission policy, a link to the video showing you how to walk through the portal, the investigation form demonstration. We'll also be sending out a feedback survey. That input is really valuable to us, so please take a few minutes to fill it out. That helps us improve future sessions and ensure we're meeting your needs and improving our program. If you asked any questions today and asked for any additional information, we'll be sending that out to you as well. Thank you so much again, and I hope everybody has a lovely night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your
Really
participation.
appreciate your showing up and sharing with us your questions and your concerns.
And thank you to Dr. Roa, Dr. Mary, and Dr. Kate for taking the
Thank you
time
so much.
to be with us today.